Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on getting schemes dashboards ready. I'm Emma James, an Industry Engagement Specialist at the Pension Regulator, or TPR, and I'm delighted to be your host for this session. Today, I'll be giving an overview of the legal duties of trustees and scheme managers and highlighting the importance of working collaboratively with those who play a supporting role. I'll also outline what help you can expect from TPR as you navigate your journey to connection. Today, I'm joined by Yu, our policy lead for dashboards, who will be discussing how schemes can prepare for the upcoming requirements. We're also pleased to welcome Sally Manchena, a professional trustee from Lord Devonshire. Together, they'll explore some of the practical aspects of dashboard preparations with a focus on data, governance and record keeping. Please do note that Sally will only be joining us for the presentation and will not be available for the Q&A. We kindly ask that you refrain from submitting questions that are directed at her. Next, we'll hear from Maria Evgenidou-Wright, TPR's Head of Enforcement, who will outline our approach to compliance and enforcement. I'll then share some of our hot topics emerging from our industry engagement. The final 20 minutes of today's webinar will be a dedicated Q&A session, where our expert panel will also include Kim Gubler, Chair of the Pension Administrators Standards Association, or PASA, and Joe Stacey from the Pensions Dashboards Programme, or PDP. Please don't hesitate to submit your questions throughout the session by typing them in the box next to the video player. And as ever with our webinars, please don't worry about capturing the information for yourself. Reference slides from today's webinar will be available for you to download during the session, along with our useful links document, and a recording of the webinar will be available in a few days' time. We'd greatly appreciate your feedback on today's webinar. There's a survey available at the top of the menu on the left-hand side of the video player. We encourage you to fill this out before you leave, even if you're unable to stay with us until the end. To start with a brief overview. As an industry, it's clear we're all committed to the benefits that pensions dashboards will bring for savers. Dashboards could revolutionise how savers engage with their pension, reconnecting them with thousands of pounds held in lost pots, and giving them the opportunity to see all their pensions in one place at a touch of a few buttons. We know that we all have a role to play in making them work, enhancing the system and enabling good outcomes for savers. There are over 2,700 occupational trust-based schemes in scope for dashboards duties, covering over 47 million memberships. All these schemes will need to connect to the central dashboard ecosystem that's being built by the Pensions Dashboards Programme, which is part of the Money and Pension Service, or MAPS. Once connected, they'll need to find savers in their records and return accurate, up-to-date value information in a timely manner. Pensions dashboards are no longer on the distant horizon. The time for schemes to start connecting to the ecosystem is fast approaching, with the first schemes expected to connect from April next year, only 4 months away. You may have already seen the recent written ministerial statement that confirms the current government's commitment to dashboards. All schemes have a legislative connection deadline of the 31st of October 2026, with a staging profile set out in DWP's guidance, which schemes must have regard to. A staged approach to connection is vital to enable a controlled and well-planned onboarding, as well as importantly to mitigate the risk of any capacity concerns, and so that schemes can see how their systems and processes hold up within a live yet controlled environment. A key point to make here is that it's critical for schemes to be aware of not following the guidance and how that can expose them to greater risk of not being able to comply with their duties by the legislative deadline of October 2026. For example, it's possible that schemes may be unable to connect at such a late point due to limited capacity in the industry. So when trustees and scheme managers make decisions around connection, there is a need to consider the balance of risks. From a scheme perspective, it should be all systems go. Trustees and scheme managers need to understand what's required to meet their duties, by when and where to go for help and support. We have guidance on our website and also a useful checklist that you can download to help you plot and track your progress. One of our important key messages is that schemes collaborate with those supporting them, to understand their connect by date and to work together to develop a practical delivery plan. This doesn't just mean schemes talking to their main administrator or software provider, but also where they have multiple administrators, AVC providers for example. It's important to ensure that all parts of the scheme are engaged with the delivery plan. Adequate governance and controls to ensure that work is progressed as planned is very important. We know that many of the larger schemes have dashboards firmly on their radar and making some great progress, but some of the smaller schemes are not engaging and there's a huge amount to do and not a lot of time left. So if you haven't started on your journey yet, don't delay. The ultimate success of dashboards will be dependent on the accuracy of data that savers see, so close attention needs to be paid. Data is not just fundamental to dashboards, but to all operational elements of a scheme. Look at the data required for dashboards, the data that will be used to find savers in scheme records, and the value data that will need to be returned to them. This data needs to be accurate, digitally accessible, and in the case of benefit value information, calculated in line with Financial Reporting Council or FRC rules and defined benefit scheme rules or DB. Data also needs to be recent, so trustees need to put in place mechanisms to revalue benefits where they don't or have not been recently calculated. A common misunderstanding at scheme level is that having a high common data score means that their data is good enough for dashboards. But while this may reflect the presence of data, it's not necessarily a reflection on the accuracy of the data. And it's likely that trustees will not know the true quality of their data unless they do some work to interrogate it. We set out our expectations over 10 years ago that schemes should measure and improve their data. We know that some schemes are still not doing this, so we're reaching out to schemes in scope for dashboards that we believe may be failing our expectations. Schemes unable to demonstrate that they have processes for reviewing, measuring and improving member data may be subject to enforcement action. We recognise the size of the challenge that dashboards presents, not just in terms of connection itself, but also the quality of data that's required to match savers with their benefits and to return accurate view and value data to them. We have a comprehensive programme of communications and engagement already in place, not only to drive awareness of the new duties, but also to identify issues that arise, so that we can support industry to resolve them. This is an example of how we're changing the way that we engage with the market. We're meeting regularly with the largest schemes, administrators, administration software providers, dashboard integrated service providers, trustee companies and legal firms. These conversations have been warmly welcomed by industry and we've found them invaluable in highlighting areas that we need to provide additional support. We're also writing directly a number of times to the Chair of Trustees and scheme managers of all occupational trust-based schemes in scope, in the lead up to their connection date as set out in guidance. We'll make clear the key actions to take, also share useful links to supporting information. As part of these communications, we're asking schemes to nominate a couple of contacts who'll be helping with their duties so that we can also write to them. To date, over 1,000 schemes have been issued with our first communication, so look out for these and take action. We'll also be sending out surveys to all schemes at key points in their journey to connection. These will be anonymised and it's really important that you complete them and return them. The insights that the surveys will provide with us in terms of industry readiness and challenge faced are vital to ensure that we understand where the key issues lie so we can consider best how we support. We have recently published our compliance and enforcement policy and updated our breach of law guidance. Maria will cover this later on today. There's a comprehensive guidance and information on our website. We also include links to organisations such as PASA who have produced useful and practical guidance covering matching, value data and recently a dashboard toolkit for AVCs. We have also included with this webinar a useful links document that you can download for your easy reference. Our dashboards checklist is also available to download and is a great practical tool for helping schemes to track and keep on top of their preparations and duties. And on that note, I'll pass over to Yu and Sally, who'll explore the practical experience and challenges faced by trustees in these important areas.
Thanks, Emma. Clearly, there is a lot to get grip with in preparing to comply with dashboard duties for both trustees and service providers who support trustees. Many of you might be wondering where to start, what the key challenges are, and how to effectively mitigating them. Today, we are fortunate to have Sally Michela, a professional trustee with extensive experience in this area. She will be sharing her insights and experience that can help us navigate through these complexities. Welcome, Sally, and thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started as a professional trustee?
Thanks, Yo-Yo. It's really great to be here with you today. So in terms of my background, I've spent my whole career in the pensions industry, including the last 4.5 years as a professional trustee at Laudeb, and then before that nearly 20 years as an actuary. I currently sit on the boards of a number of DB and DC schemes that range from very large to very small, and I've supported schemes across a range of projects, including buy-ins, buyouts, transfer of DC to master trust, GMP projects, and of course, pensions dashboards.
Thanks, Sally. Now, let's dive into our main topic, preparation for dashboard duties. It's important to recognize a common trend among those preparing for dashboard that, at the moment, many schemes are prioritizing their preparation for connections, ensuring they can connect by their staging date. Where there is certainly a critical aspect of preparation, there is a significant area that often gets overlooked, data preparation. As Emma just mentioned in her introduction, data is particularly critical for the success of dashboards. Dashboards will not work for the savers if the data they've reviewed is not good enough. In addition, without proper data preparation, you may be unable to find a suitable provider to assist you in connection, or it may take a long time to integrate various systems and connect to dashboards. Schemes must not underestimate the significance of data preparation. But good quality of data is not a new expectation. We have set expectations on pension trustees and scheme managers for many years. They should regularly review the quality of their scheme data, ensure that the administrator has an effective process to maintaining it, and continues making improvements. Dashboard requirements have brought to light several elements that many schemes may not have paid enough attention to previously. This means that whilst trustees might consider their data to be sufficient, this may not be the situation. Sally, what's your experience on data preparation work that your scheme conducts additionally for dashboards? What are the biggest challenges that you are facing in this area?
Thanks, Yo-Yo. So the wider context here is that while data for DC schemes has always needed to be clean on an ongoing basis, for DB schemes historically, there was a view that typically the data only needed to be clean when the benefits were crystallised. Now, there's been a much broader shift to improving DB data in the industry over the past 5 to 10 years. That's to support GMP projects, insurance transactions, administration, self-service, in addition to dashboards. And it's worth thinking about this broader view when considering data projects, to consider the data cleaning actions that might be needed across different projects and how these might be combined for efficiency or prioritised when needed. Now, in my experience, at the current time, all schemes are doing data work, but different schemes are in widely different positions on the cleanliness of their data. And this is usually for scheme-specific reasons, for example, more complex benefit structures or more changes in the administrator. Now, thinking about the dashboard specifics, one aspect where dashboards is perhaps changing the dynamic is in relation to data items that erode in value over time, such as postcodes, which might feature in find data, as it's created a greater reason to seek to improve these ahead of members approaching retirement. Now, moving on to value data, on the DB side, administrators have generally been increasing automation over time, which is now really helpful from a dashboard's perspective. However, there may be calculations which haven't yet been automated. For example, there might only be a small number of members with a particular benefit structure that was fine if you were dealing with a drip feed of these members retiring, but the 10-day turnaround for dashboards might mean that it's now worth considering automating these calculations. And it's worth noting that the specialist teams within administrators who typically undertake the programming of benefit calculations are really busy at the moment. So it's worth considering values and the degree of automation in your scheme sooner rather than later. And if you haven't yet got your teeth into the specifics of value data, and in my experience, lots of schemes haven't reached that point yet, while find data is often quite standardised across schemes, the value data considerations are much more scheme specific. So don't underestimate what's needed at this stage.
Thanks, Sally. I would like to further explore the data cleansing exercise that you just mentioned. In your experience with data cleansing, how do you work with administrators to establish and maintain the process to ensure that member data remain accurate and complete? Given our expectation, as stated in our new General Code, is that trustees and scheme managers are required to maintain complete and accurate records, so you can pay the right member the right benefit at the right time.
Yes, I'm seeing an increased focus on not only whether the data is there, but also whether what's held on the admin systems is right. For example, dashboard readiness reporting from your administrator might include a review of items that can be used for matching with find requests, including an accuracy assessment, which might be based on using external reference data, and an assessment of the percentage of likely matches based on matching policy recommendations. We've also seen value in engaging with actuaries too, to help sense check the approaches taken by the admin teams and ensure that we're either not oversimplifying or overcomplicating matters. Now, this is useful where the dashboards team may not be the business as usual team, or perhaps the capacity constraints in the business as usual team could otherwise cause potential issues. It's a knowledgeable additional resource that may help provide assurance to the trustees and potentially reduce bottlenecks in service. On a related point, we're also seeing schemes think about member communications as part of the coding that goes alongside the value data, or more generally as part of the wider scheme communications.
A very good point. Accurate data should be defined within its specific context. For example, in terms of dashboard technical connection, accuracy means adhering to PDP data standards, while from the perspective of a saver, accuracy often means that the information received via dashboard is clear, relevant, and not misleading. To enhance this aspect, user experience testing of dashboards can be highly beneficial. This would allow schemes to improve the transparency, accuracy, and recency of your member data. Clearly, as trustee, you rely on your administrator to conduct all this data preparation work. Our dashboard guidance emphasizes the importance of collaboration with advisors and service providers to foster good practice. Our guidance also suggests a number of discussion points for trustees to consider having with their providers. So Sally, could you please share your experience on how you ensure that your administrator and other relevant providers are on track with their progress? What steps do you take to ensure that your administrator bring forward relevant information at the right time for you to make a decision? Specifically, how do you ensure that you have sufficient and reliable information to make well-informed decisions?
So in my experience, schemes are relying heavily on their administrators to manage the process, but trustees still retain the ultimate responsibility, and it's worth remembering that there are legal deadlines to meet. Now, you should have received project plans, which you can review and monitor progress against to ensure that your scheme will be ready by its staging date. As a reminder, I'd expect all trustee boards to be discussing dashboards on a regular basis. I'd also recommend using TPR checklist on an ongoing basis to tick off the items as you go. PASA has also produced lots of useful guidance covering matching, value data, and connection readiness. And there's also the recently published Dashboard Toolkit to support trustees and administrators in connecting AVCs to dashboards, all really useful resources if you haven't checked them out already. Now, in my experience, schemes with summer 2025 staging dates typically already have their fine data agreed and are in various stages of working through the value data, from about to start to almost complete on the scheme specifics of this. Now, in some instances, data progress has been delayed due to challenges with agreeing the contractual side with administrators, which has impacted timelines, but arguably ensures a higher standard of accountability. A few other observations on the impact of dashboards on the admin market. So in some cases, dashboards has prompted schemes to move to a third-party admin provider. In other cases, dashboards is creating a barrier for schemes to review administrators at the current time, as schemes are potentially reluctant to change administrator as we approach dashboard deadlines. It's possible there may be some delayed administration retenders once dashboards have settled in. And some schemes are looking to consolidate ABC providers to reduce dashboard issues. If you have a small scheme without a third-party administrator or a non-standard admin platform, there are some solutions out there for dashboards, but I'd suggest engaging early to ensure that you can contract with an ISP and comply. It's also worth making sure that your governance is lined up in advance. Some schemes have set up dedicated working groups, and some are delegating to an admin or a benefits committee. If so, it's worth updating the terms of reference to ensure that the appropriate delegations are in place to take the relevant decisions at the appropriate time.
Thank you for sharing your experience and tips so far. Let's shift our focus to another critical aspect of trustees' responsibilities: record keeping. As we know, there are a variety of records trustees are required to maintain. Some mandated by legislation, while others may be less clearly defined. For dashboards, there are specific record keeping and reporting requirements that set out by MAP's reporting standards. In addition, trustees are expected to maintain a clear audit trail to demonstrate how they have regard to the DWP guidance on connection, the steps that they take to achieve connection, as well as the matching criteria for the scheme. Our new General Code also set out our expectations for trustees and scheme managers on record keeping as part of an effective system of governance. Some of these expectations are linked to the data quality that we have touched on previously. Our code also states that the system of governance must be proportionate to the size, nature, scale, and complexity of the activities of the scheme. I'm curious, based on your experience, are there common practice or specific record-keeping considerations that trustees should be mindful of in relation to dashboard preparation?
So record keeping is a really broad topic. Now, in relation to dashboard preparation and the decisions currently being taken, in my experience, these discussions are typically taking place in minuted meetings. So there's typically a good audit trail in place. There are also often helpful summary papers being prepared by the administrators to cover the agreed decisions, for example, in relation to find data and value data. Now, as I mentioned previously, TPR's checklist is helpful in terms of various other aspects of the project that you need to consider, and therefore would be wise to have documented through the process. I'd also suggest the recent enforcement policy shared by TPR has some useful examples, such as in relation to schemes winding up before October 26, and what schemes might want to consider and document in these circumstances. And it's always easier to create an audit trail as you go rather than create one later in the process. So do think about it as you go along. And more generally, on any underlying data work being undertaken, I always strongly suggest that the teams doing the data work are creating a strong audit trail as part of that job. Now, down the line, trustees will want to think about what records are being held in relation to data created and shared on dashboards. It'll also be worth thinking about the impact on data mapping, and there's the impact on the data protection impact assessment, which you'll pick up if you're working through the TPR checklist.
Thanks, Sally. We've covered many of the challenges you face in preparing for dashboard. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear some of your reflection on this process. Have you seen any opportunities or benefits that has been emerged from this preparation work?
Yes, it's really easy to think about the challenges at this stage especially, but there are also lots of benefits that dashboards could bring us, such as increased member engagement in pensions. Now, we know that this can be a big challenge, especially in DC, and dashboards is more generally another way for your members, who you may have lost contact with, to initiate contact with your scheme or prompt action from your members. It can encourage members to consolidate DC pots and potentially encourage schemes to streamline historic ABCs. There's improved data, increased automation, and these all support more self-service administration.
Thanks again, Sally, for joining us today and sharing your valuable insight on dashboards preparations. I just kindly remind you again that Sally unfortunately won't join us at the Q&A panel later, so please do not submit any questions directly to her. However, I will be on the panel to answer any of your questions. I'm now handing over to Maria to outline our compliance and enforcement approach for pensions dashboards.
Thanks, Yu. As we have heard, dashboards present an important opportunity for savers to be able to access their pension information and make informed decisions about their future. In order to achieve this, you'll play a vital part in making this happen, connecting to dashboards, being able to find members and provide them with accurate information. Once schemes are connected to the live environment, the remaining legal duties kick in. Our role as a regulator is to ensure compliance with the requirements, and we have recently published our compliance and enforcement policy, which details our approach and outlines case scenarios to illustrate how this may work in practice. Additionally, we have updated our breach of law guidance with specific dashboard examples to assist trustees, as well as others with a reporting duty, to decide whether to report a breach to us. Our policy sets out expectations for schemes to be able to demonstrate how they've had regard to DWP's connection guidance. This includes documenting reasons for related decisions, assessment of the associated risks, and relevant mitigating actions. Additionally, we set out expectations for third parties, because even though the legal duties sit with the trustees and scheme managers, third parties have an important role to play in achieving compliance. We are committed to taking a pragmatic approach to compliance and will focus on saver outcomes. This means considering a range of factors before deciding whether to take regulatory action, including the nature and scale of the impact on members and the numbers of members affected. However, where we see willful or reckless behaviour, we will be robust in our response. We also recognise that some requirements may be challenging for industry to meet. However, we expect those involved to take prompt and effective action to investigate and correct any issues, including any underlying causes identified during the user testing stage. I will now take you through an overview of the policy and a case example. Our compliance and enforcement policy is principles-based, meaning we'll use these to guide our response to any non-compliance. To give a brief overview of the principles, we are risk-based and proportionate, targeting our resources according to the level of risk and intervening only to the extent necessary to address the harm or reduce the risk. We are focused on outcomes for savers. We recognise that delivering pensions dashboards is a huge challenge for industry, but also the industry is best placed to devise common solutions, and we will support them in doing so. We will focus on the quality of the data held by schemes, as the success of dashboards relies on the quality of this data, both in terms of finding savers, but also making sure that savers can trust the information presented to them. We will also focus on the governance of schemes, as robust internal governance is key for ongoing compliance, which will enable the scheme to identify issues and risks early and put in place mitigations accordingly. We acknowledge that schemes will be highly dependent on third parties in order to comply with their duties, and will consider using our powers against these third parties where necessary to do so. We highlight a number of key risk areas we'll focus on in the policy. While these are not exhaustive, we expect trustees and scheme managers to be able to demonstrate how these have been identified, considered, and, if necessary, mitigated. To highlight a few, these include the scheme failing to connect by the connection deadline, being unable to demonstrate how they have had regard to DWP's guidance on connection, data quality and data controls, for example, having accurate personal data for matching purposes, as well as the information then provided to members being accurate and in line with the requirements. Additionally, we have set out our expectations on data quality in our guidance for schemes to be able to comply with duties. Trustees and scheme managers need to be confident in the accuracy of the data they are using for matching. In advance of connection, schemes should undertake an audit of their data to identify any issues with accuracy and completeness, and work with administrators to improve data if and where required. Trustees should also have systems and processes in place to ensure that data is of a good standard. In this policy, we set out our expectations towards compliance, as well as what schemes can expect from us in our approach, and what options we have to ensure compliance, including how we work with other agencies and regulators. For example, we expect guidance to be taken into consideration. As well as our guidance and DWP's, we expect consideration of PDP's connection guidance too, with the view that any decisions on connection are informed by all these guidance combined in the round. This may include considerations around supplier availability, PDP's own resource, and what this means for the risk of not connecting in time for the legislative date. As already mentioned, schemes have a legal duty to have regard to DWP's guidance on connection, and we expect schemes to adhere to the dates set out in this guidance. Additionally, schemes should have systems of governance and internal controls with appropriate audit trails, which include record keeping, including information around decisions and actions taken, risk management systems, appropriate controls when selecting, appointing and managing providers, and having processes in place to identify and, if necessary, report breaches of law. Following the dates in the state's timetable will mitigate against undue strain on all parties involved in facilitating connection, including PDP, administrators and integrated service providers. Not following the state's timetable could expose schemes and providers to greater risk of not being able to comply with dashboard duties, which may result in enforcement action by us. Our policy also sets out information around how we'll monitor instances of non-compliance and our approach in relation to breaches. We'll be receiving data from the dashboard system, including connection status, as well as data required from schemes by the reporting standards. Schemes should also maintain their own records in accordance with regulations. We will use this data to identify breaches, as well as looking at trends to see where an issue may warrant further investigation. We may request additional information from schemes where we identify concerns or where we are looking to identify best practice. This includes gathering information on a number of schemes on a thematic basis, for example through a thematic review. Existing duties around breach of law reports continue to apply, and schemes should follow the reporting expectations as set out in our Code of Practice. We have recently updated this guidance with dashboard-specific examples to demonstrate a potential approach to breach of law reports using a red, amber and green system. For example, we would consider failure to connect by the deadline of the 31st of October 2026 to be a red breach and must be reported to us. Where there has been a breach or suspected breach of legislation, we will consider if an investigation is appropriate and, if necessary, take regulatory action, including enforcement. We have discretion over our approach in respect of action on compliance with dashboard regulations, and we will consider, on balance, any action we may take against the outcomes we may achieve. We have powers in relation to non-compliance with dashboard duties, including compliance notices, penalty notices, and options in relation to third parties where they have caused the trustee or scheme manager to be in breach of their duties. As I have mentioned previously, we will be prudent with the use of our powers, but in the event of willful or reckless behaviour, we will be robust in our approach. We have included a number of illustrative scenarios in our policy to demonstrate how everything discussed so far may work in practice. For each scenario, we look at an area of non-compliance and aim to demonstrate one example of good practice we're looking for and another example of bad practice, and what our response to that may be. To emphasize, these are illustrative examples and should not be interpreted as a definitive indicator of the action we will take. I'll take you through one of these examples that demonstrates our expectations regarding data quality and controls, so that schemes are able to match members and provide them with their data. In this example, we have Scheme E and Scheme F who do not return any possible matches to their find requests. While pensions dashboards are still in user testing, Scheme E sets a tight matching policy. As their administrator advised, they would be unable to handle the volume of queries arising from possible matches due to limited resource. This is caused by large data gaps in members' first names and national insurance numbers. The administrator has already put in place an improvement plan for these data gaps, but one large employer has not been providing the information they need, despite repeated attempts to engage. As not matching savers is a breach, the trustees reported this breach to us. Upon investigation, the employer is unable to provide a reasonable explanation for this to us. We issue a third-party compliance notice to the employer to provide the data set out in the legal obligations, which is needed by the scheme. We follow up with the trustees of Scheme E to ensure that the matching policy is reviewed once the issue is resolved and monitor the volumes of possible matches to confirm. Trend analysis of the system data over several months after public launch identifies that Scheme F does not seem to have returned any possible matches. We investigate and confirm that the scheme is using a binary matching policy, which does not allow for possible matches, only full matches. The trustees are unable to provide any explanation as to why they are only allowing for full matches. As not matching savers is a breach, and the binary matching policy might be causing this to happen, we issue Scheme F with a compliance notice for the scheme to review its matching policy to ensure it is appropriate. I hope this has provided you with a useful overview of our policy and given you an understanding of our expectations and risk areas. Dashboards will provide your members with a significant tool in their future planning, and through compliance with these regulations, this can be realised. I'll now hand you back over to Emma, who will run through some of the hot topics we hear about from our industry engagement.
Thanks, Maria. As I highlighted earlier today, we have a comprehensive programme of industry engagement where we meet with a wide variety of stakeholders, as well as engaging directly with schemes. The engagement provides us with a broad picture of where the key challenges and issues lie, and this is really important as all the information is used by us to inform our approach. I wanted to share a few common practical insights from these discussions that I like to call our hot topics. Since the publication of DWP's guidance on connection, there have been discussions with and about schemes who have multiple sections with multiple administrators. So where do the main challenges lie? From a legislative perspective, all parts of the scheme must connect at the same time, even if administered by different providers. This means that trustees need to ensure they're communicating with all those involved to understand how each part of their scheme will connect to dashboards. There is no single solution, which members are in scope to be connected, and to ensure that the quality of data enables the right information to be returned to the right person. Don't assume that your administrators are dealing with this for you. The decisions lie with you, the trustees. From a third-party administrator perspective, it may not be known that there are multiple sections within a scheme administered elsewhere, and this can lead to incorrect assumptions by administrators on a scheme's connect by date and when it actually is. In fact, there could be a risk that an administrator may not know that the section of the scheme that they administer is even in scope for dashboards. This may also apply to your AVC provider. This just reiterates that it is so important those dashboards conversations start early. We are also hearing that some schemes are having difficulties engaging with providers, particularly some of the AVC providers. What's important is to keep communicating and to ensure that you have robust governance audit trails in place, that you are able to clearly demonstrate the actions that you've taken. Buyouts are a common theme that we are hearing. More schemes are thinking about de-risking, so you may be wondering, why bother for dashboards? Well, you should bother. The data improvements you need to make for dashboards are also the kind of improvements you need to make for de-risking, so they may help you get a better deal. And not everyone who hopes to be bought out before 31st of October 2026 will be bought out, and then you, as trustees, will be responsible for not complying. Considerations need to be made about the limited capacity in market. Unless a scheme is already working with a buyout provider, it is risky to assume the transaction will be completed in time. Schemes only fall out of scope for dashboards regulations when the number of relevant members falls to zero. This means that unless all members in the scheme are pensioners, or the buyout is completed for all relevant members, the scheme will remain in scope for dashboards. Change of administrator is also a very common topic in terms of how legislation applies. The legislation is clear. Once a scheme is connected, they must stay connected in line with PDP's standards. And when there is a change of administrator, that there will be no blackout period for dashboards connection, and trustees remain required to meet their dashboards duties and stay connected while the change takes place. Trustees and scheme managers must consider dashboards duties when onboarding a new administrator. They should maintain a robust audit trail, which includes the planning process and any risk management measures put in place for the change of administrator. Dashboards will increase member engagement, and there are concerns from the schemes and from administrators, centred around the impact that dashboards will have on traffic to call centres in an industry where administration resources are already under pressure. Another topic that's commonly raised is what DWP communications campaign will look like before dashboards are launched to the public, and when will schemes have more information so that they can understand and better plan. Well, the focus right now, rightfully, is on getting schemes connected. This is an active conversation with delivery partners, and more information will be shared on this in the future. That concludes our presentation. We'll now give you a couple of minutes to submit your questions. Welcome back. We've been joined by Kim Gubler as Chair at PASA and Joe Stacey, Senior Industry Engagement Manager at PDP, to tackle your questions today. We've had quite a few come through, so we're going to extend by an extra 5 minutes, so let's get straight to it. This first question's for you, Joe. It says, what is the latest progress with the volunteer participant connection to the pensions dashboards ecosystem?
Good afternoon, Emma. Thank you. So yes, of course, connection of the volunteer participants is a priority for the programme at the moment, and we are making good progress. So the volunteer participants are a cohort of organisations who are connecting directly to our central digital architecture. It's mainly made up of integrated service providers, the ISPs. There are some administrators and providers also doing their own connection, and of course the DWP state pension. So we have around 20 VPs to connect. We have been making good progress. Earlier this summer, the first of our participants began their connection journey. And we've been, as part of a phased process of connecting the VPs, we have been gradually bringing in more VPs to begin their connection journeys. They are making good progress, and as the first of our participants go through the connection journey, we're learning a great deal about how we can improve that connection journey, fix any issues, improve our guidance for other VPs, volunteer participants, that will be coming through after them. So we're now in the process of inviting the remainder of our VP cohort, and we expect to have invited all of our VPs to begin their connection journeys by mid-December. And this is building the momentum, paving the way for the scheme and provider connection that we expect to start from April next year.
Amazing, thank you, Joe. Our second question today is a video question, so we can check that out now.
Hello, my name is Claire Neal and I work for the National Police Chiefs Council, providing strategic advice about the police pension scheme to the 43 police forces across England and Wales. It's very likely that members' data that is held by pension schemes is not going to be as accurate as it will need to be to enable positive matches for pensions dashboards, resulting in a significant demand for services from pension schemes. I'm therefore interested to know what the member journey will look like when the scheme doesn't have a positive match. How will TPR know if a scheme has not provided value data within the legislative timeframes? How will the member be kept informed, and what recourse will they have if schemes do not comply?
Thank you. Great question. Earlier today, Maria did highlight our approach to that, but I am keen to hear some thoughts on accuracy from Kim.
Thanks very much. Well, obviously, a lot of pension schemes are thinking about their data at the moment, and in particular about accuracy. One of the things that PASA is doing is really trying to help schemes understand just how much work that they've got to do. And in fact, next week we'll be launching our data scoring guidance, which will really help people get sort of a really clear picture of the state of their data and the work that they still have to do. But clearly, it's going to be, it's a moving feast. Schemes may connect, and they might find that they've got less positive matches than they'd like, and they still have work to do. So I think what it is about sort of really planning out the work that you need, looking at the guidance out there, with some really good guidance from PASA, of course, and programming what that work is. If you can do that, then hopefully by the time that you've got a full access to all pension savers, then what we'll have is we'll have a really better experience for all the users of pension dashboards.
Amazing, thanks for that, Kim. Our next question is for Maria. We've been asked, when do pension schemes have to have their dashboards fully functional?
Well, as soon as a scheme is connected to the live environment, all the requirements will apply. We do recognise that there might be some challenges with schemes, connecting and fulfilling all the requirements. However, we would expect any issues to be identified and addressed ideally during the user testing phase. So, as I said earlier, we will be pragmatic in our approach to non-compliance. So we will look at any breaches and look at the impact that they've had on savers, the number of members affected, and issues like that before we decide what action to take.
Amazing, thank you very much. Our next question is, I'm keen to ask to Joe and to Kim actually. It would be really helpful to understand exactly what members will see on screen when they use their pensions dashboards. Do you know when that will be available?
So the pensions dashboards will display some basic information about a member's pension and so it's a combination of the administrative information and some value information. The Money Helper dashboard team are developing their plans for engagement and communication with the wider industry to help to share the evolving Money Helper dashboard design, which I really think will help bring it to life for wider industry. They have been developing the initial design, undertaking user research, and will be sharing an initial draft of their user testing plan in the coming weeks with as part of an engagement event, and then we'll be looking to broaden our engagement, including our plans for user testing and sharing sharing the dashboard more widely over the coming year.
That's super. I mean, what I'm really excited about, because you can have all the user testing in the world, but you don't get the real value from it until people start seeing their own data on their own pension schemes. So the Money Helper dashboard will start doing just that from just past the connection dates next year, and that'll run on for I think about 12 months. And during that time, there's going to be iterations, because we will learn. There's at the moment PASA is doing work on the error codes that data providers give to pension dashboards, and what we particularly want here within the toolkit is to be able to create a really consistent experience for dashboards users, because most people might have 6 or 7 pension schemes. Now, if one pension scheme shows data in a different way to another pension scheme, that's not a great experience. You might, as a pension scheme or a data provider, have fulfilled your obligation. But we have to remember this is about pension savers. We always have to bring it back to what does it feel like to them. And that's what that real user testing with real data is going to do. And so out of all of the design standards from Money Helper, the learnings that we have, that will build in. So we'll really see what people will get to look at in the end. And it won't just be about basic data on a screen. It will be about an experience. That's what we should aim to be going for.
Amazing, great insights from both of you there. We're now going to cut to another video question.
Hi, Paul Latimer, Head of Pension Administration at Barnet Waddingham. Understandably, we're concentrating on in-scope schemes, those with more than 100 relevant members. I'm curious about the support for out-of-scope schemes with less than 100 members, where the trustees do want to participate, perhaps because they have a related scheme which is in scope and want the members to have the same pensions dashboard experience. Is there further guidance to come for trustees of out-of-scope schemes who want to volunteer to participate as to the procedure they need to follow? Thank you.
Fantastic question there about schemes that are with less than 100 members. I'm keen to pass that over to my colleague Yo-Yo and to then get some thoughts from you as well there, Joe.
Yeah. So schemes may choose to want to volunteer schemes that out of scope may want to voluntarily connecting to the dashboard, if that's happened, that's the scheme, that's the choice of trustees. Then the first step, I would recommend trustees to talking to administrators and your connection providers, because the schemes that want to voluntarily connect, you need to comply with PDP requirements and the PDP standards. We are working with PDPs on the details process around this, which will be available to you when it's available. So watch this space. I'm just I was just wondering, Joe, is there any things to add in?
As you say, we're certainly. As you say, we're working with yourselves, the regulators, on the process so that schemes are able to make an application to add schemes on a voluntary basis. I think broadly it would be a good thing to be able to do if we can, where we're able to and can support that, and the regulators agree, as it would of course add coverage to the dashboard. I guess there's a broader point that it links to, which is, and so we will publish information and guidance on that once we've finalised the process. So watch this space and do keep an eye out on our website for if you look in the support hub, there's a queries and feedback section where you can find common Q&A. We'll be developing that. We'll also be developing our connection hub on the website with information and guidance for schemes and providers. At the moment, it's very much focused on our volunteer participant cohort. But in terms of the dashboard itself, we recognise that there won't always be 100% coverage on a dashboard. I think it does say in the FCA rules that dashboards will be required to make it clear to the user that they may not, that not all of their pensions may be available on a dashboard. But I think this will be an important feature of the user testing when we get into it with the Money Helper dashboard next year, to explore how those messages land with the user and the kind of behaviours and actions that leads the user to take. And we'll be working very closely with the industry as well on monitoring that, and then how can we refine that and shape that user experience to ensure it's a positive one.
Could I just add in a little thing on that? Is that obviously a lot of schemes with less than 100 relevant members may be quite small, and they may not be fully digitised. It's a great opportunity to do so. It helps to future-proof the scheme, so that could be helpful there. But just also going back to what Joe was saying about how people might react when they don't see a pension there. It very much might be not, oh, it's just not there. It might be, who's stolen my pension? So we need to be very mindful of what's not on a dashboard when somebody accesses it.
Thank you. Another question for you, Joe. How will trustees know that their scheme has successfully been connected by a third party?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I was discussing that with colleagues this morning. So the ISP, or the organisation that is connecting the scheme on their behalf, will be working directly with the programme to agree their connection date, to submit their connection date, and that will be the date they are released into the live environment. And we don't expect trustees or managers of schemes to necessarily contact us directly to agree that specific connection date. We will expect that primarily to come from the connecting organisation. Once that date has been agreed and they are connected into the live environment, I expect there will be some form of notification that the ISP, the connecting organisation, will receive from the connection portal. So I think that will be the primary way in which the connecting organisation can then inform the trustee that they are successfully connected.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We've got another question that's come through asking, in terms of schemes in scope for PDP, 100 or more relevant members in scope year ending in 12-month period of 31st of March 2024, how do you count deferred members with multiple records, as one or as a number of records? Can you help us there, Kim?
I'll try. As is always the case, it depends. For some, say, DC schemes with auto-enrolment mainly members. You might find that you've got multiple members or members who have multiple periods of service that you haven't connected them. So therefore they will be counted separately. But if you might have a DB scheme that's got linked to your memberships, you probably find that they'll count as one. So I think what's the answer to that is you're going to have to know your scheme.
Fantastic, thank you. Now for another video question.
Hi, I'm Melanie Cusack. I'm a professional trustee with Zedra Governance Limited. I'd like to ask how Dashboards is going to interact with the schemes that are currently going through a buy-in true-up and potentially buy-out. Obviously, a lot of time and effort is going into truing up, but if the dashboard staging date falls within that period, the pension scheme trustees are sort of grappling with how they ensure they comply with their dashboard staging date, knowing full well that before the October 26th date, they will have moved across to the insurer who has probably already had a staging date. How's TPR dealing with that sort of conundrum, please?
Another great question, and one we do hear often in our engagement about schemes currently going through buy-in and potentially buy-out. Maria, would you be able to help us with that question?
Yeah, sure. Well, as you said earlier, Emma, in your hot topic section, the scheme will fall out of scope only when the members have fallen down to zero. So, of course, if a scheme did genuinely expect to have bought out by the 31st of October 2026 and then didn't manage to, they will be in breach, and that's something we would expect them to report to us. As I mentioned earlier, we have updated our reporting guidance to include specific examples on dashboards. So we would expect people to use that as a guide to see what needs reporting to us. And of course, as I already said, we will be pragmatic in how we look at the breaches. But what's very important is for trustees and managers to keep very good records of any decisions so that they can demonstrate that process. And just as a reminder, if the scheme hasn't completely bought out, they might still receive communications from us.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Maria. Our next question. Will people already in receipt of a pension be able to access their data through the system? And if so, how much of their data will they be able to see? Kim, can you help us there?
Well, one of the things with pension dashboards is to connect people with the pensions that are not in payment, and then to get them to understand those pensions and then to act. So if you're already lucky enough to be in receipt of a pension, then that won't show on pension dashboards. And at the moment, that is also pensions that are in drawdown. But we don't know whether that might change over time. But at the moment, that's essentially it. So, it might be that a person has a pension in payment and a pension that is yet to come into payment. So if they went onto a pension dashboard, they will see the one that hasn't. And hopefully, if they're in receipt of a payment, a pension, then they know that they've got it. So, and they don't usually need to make a decision about it.
Fantastic, thank you. My next question today is for you. For schemes that have applied for deferral, when do you think they're likely to hear if they're successful?
So, of course, the deferral of connection deadline is the decisions from Secretary of State. So it's not really for TPR or me to making any comments in terms of the timescales around it. However, as far as I understanding that DWPs are in the processing of those deferral complications, which of course TPR has been supported to because they consulted with us. So I think schemes should be waiting to receive that results. Any decisions from DWPs in due course.
Amazing, thank you, Yu. We've got a question from Alice now. Is there any update on when trustees will be able to see what the dashboard interface will look like and what people will see when they visit the dashboard? I think you can take that one, Joe.
So this is similar to the question we had, isn't it? And I think it's probably worth, so in addition to the basic information that the person will see on the dashboard, the admin data of the schemes that that have been found on their behalf, and some value information. as well as any potential signposting to things like guidance. And I know the Money Helper dashboard team are looking at, how they wrap around the sort of guidance offer around that dashboard. I think before the user gets to see the dashboard, of course, they do have to go through the process of proving they are who they say they are. So they'll go through a journey with one login, gov.uk one login, which is providing the identity service. They'll prove who they are, who they say they are. They'll then initiate a find request. So they'll go through that part of the journey before they do actually then see this information on the dashboard and then consider what they want to do with it. So in terms of, as I mentioned, the team within MAPS and the programme, we're working together with delivery partners, the regulators, DWP and industry to think about how we can best engage over the coming months. And I expect you'll see more in terms of our engagement around the Money Helper dashboard and help bring it to life as we get into next year, and especially as we get into live user testing.
Amazing. That's some really useful insights there, Joe. Thank you. Now for another video question.
Hi everyone, Rob Hurst, Process Manager at First Actuarial. Pensions dashboards will enable savers to view information about their multiple pension pots all in one place. This will be even better for savers when the presentation of information is instant for all pots. The timeliness for some of that data being presented has an SLA attached to it. No doubt the SLA is in recognition of some pension schemes not having the accrued value information instantly available, perhaps the case for most pension schemes with deferred DB benefits. With data quality being a challenge for many too. The quality of data should be improving as a result of dashboard readiness. So with that in mind, is there any aspiration for value data to be shown to savers in the moment more often, to a point where the SLA may be shortened or removed altogether? Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for that question. Yu, can you give us some insights there, please?
Of course. The SLA, actually, the time scales that for schemes to return the value information back to members over dashboard is a legislative requirement that's setting out in the regulations. So it's not really for TPRs to comment it whether they will be changed in future or not. However, the requirement is if the value data is based on the information that's been already been included in the statement that been provided in the past 13 months, or is based on the calculations that provided to the members in the past 12 months. In this example, in these situations, it could be based on the calculation based on the member who previously requested information through dashboard. Then the data should be returned immediately in those cases. Therefore, our expectations is as the time goes along, when the users or members using the dashboards more often, we will see the requirements for this using the 3 or 10 day SLAs will be reduced. The frequency of this will be reduced, and therefore we will see is more, the members will have more immediate information on that. However, also as Kim and Joe just mentioned, that the user experience testing is very important, and it's important for us to understand how this impacts savers in understanding as well. We are working with DWPs and delivery partners to understanding the cost vs benefits on to the industry and also members in terms of the cost vs benefit, in terms of receiving real-time informations. So if there is, those changes required into the legislations, we will feature that into the consideration. However, if there is any needed for the change of legislation, that need the minister's approval, and also it will be subject to the public's consultations.
Amazing.
Can I I know, I'm sorry, but this is really quite important. We have to realise that dashboards is version 1. And we have to get it out there, and it's not going to be perfect. But over time, then people may be able to see real-time information. Once data's good and you can get calculations automated and returned, it may not even be 13 months old. It might be today. So, but we've got to start somewhere.
Fantastic, thank you. Our next question that we have here, can you help the provision of pension dashboard contacts with the largest AVC providers where schemes are struggling to get these directly? Also just tagging on this question is, what should schemes do if their AVC provider will not respond with them? Yu, can you start with that one?
Yes, my understanding is we are asking the schemes to engage with AVC providers at the first instance, and vice versa. AVC providers can approach trustees when they have their trustee schemes information as well. We are working with FCA as well to jointly to engage with AVC providers to understand the common approach. And I believe PASA has also launched the dashboard toolkit, which is cover the AVC element. So it is an area that we are working together, trying to supporting the schemes and AVC providers in this area.
Amazing. Kim, did you want to add anything to that question as well?
Just a small one. We did launch the dashboard toolkit. The first component of that was the AVC module, and with that we have given some contact information for the main insurers with the AVCs, and bear in mind your administrator will quite often, if you've got a third-party administrator, they will be able to help you there, because you're pretty much not going to be the only scheme that is with that insurer. So there's strength in numbers there.
Fantastic, thank you, Kim. Our next question, this has come from Raj. If the number of relevant members was 100 or more at relevant date, but falls well below 100 soon after the 31st of March 2024, is the scheme still obliged to connect to the PDP ecosystem, or is there some discretion there? Yo-Yo.
I think I probably will give you a very short answer here, because I think Maria already and also you has covered this in your previous hot topic. The schemes were only falling out of scope when their relevant members drop into zero. So unfortunately, if your relevant members hasn't dropped into zero before the connection deadline, you are in scope and you have to comply with your dashboard duties.
Amazing, thank you. Our final question today, we've had quite a lot submitted, but our final question, which has come from Catherine, data matching items. Should we use anything other than Nino, name, date of birth, and why might we consider using other data items? Come on, Kim.
I can see that coming this way. I mean, ultimately, pension schemes can use other data items, but they're just not mandatory. So, email addresses, mobile numbers, all of those kind of things can be included. But obviously, if your records, if you don't hold them, then there's no point in using them. But a lot of, certainly DC schemes and the master trusts are trying to gather as much information as possible. And it really does help, because they're actually looking at sort of data matching at a forensic level there, to be able to tell whether you've got a DS Smith, is a David Smith, and looking at various parts of information. So whilst on the verification you're coming in and it might not have all of them, as a scheme you can bring in other data points which will help you to make sure that you have a positive match.
And I would just say that where the address comes through from one login, although it won't be verified as a current address, it is demonstrated to be a genuine address, and that there is a genuine connection with the user and that address. So that may be considered as well.
Amazing, thank you. Well, unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. To close, I'd like to reiterate that you should never lose track of your duties. And while we know that it's a huge IT undertaking and that issues are bound to arise, it's all for the ultimate goal of improving saver outcomes. So it's key that we keep communicating. We need industry to get on board with their preparation and to tell us when things are going wrong, so that we can help them find solutions that work for them and for savers. members. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the panel and for all of you today for joining us and submitting your questions. We do hope that you found the session interesting and informative, and as mentioned earlier, a set of reference slides are now available along with your useful links document. A replay of this webinar recording will be accessible in a few days' time by navigating back to this page. So for now, we appreciate your feedback, but we'd love to hear what you have to say as well. And please do take the time to submit your views on today's webinar by following the survey tab to the left-hand side of the menu. For now, it's goodbye from all of us. Thank you.